All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Creo webinar series installment, where today we're going to look at the flexible modeling extension. My name is Rob Romanowski, the Director of Sales Operations with 3HTI. Joining me today are Jeff Gavio, our 3HTI's Director of Marketing, and Zach Carson, Solutions Consultant, Application Engineer with PTC. So this webinar is supposed to be informative because flexible modeling was introduced as part of the Creo packages, I believe, with Creo 4 or 5. Zach, I'll clarify that. But basically, for most of you who are attending the webinar today, this is already a part of your package. And what we want to do is just make sure that you're using it, make sure that you understand how to use it, because it is the best CAD tool available today. It makes your modeling much more efficient, saves you a lot of time, and a lot less picks and clicks. If it saves you 30 seconds here, 40 seconds there, 60 seconds there, overall throughout your modeling process, that adds up. So without further ado, I'm going to have Zach review the flexible modeling extension, which is now part of the Creo base package and all Creo packages, and give a demo. And then if there's any questions, feel free to type those into the chat as we go, and we will definitely answer those at the end. So Zach, take the con, my friend.
All right, thanks, Rob. Yeah, everyone, it's nice to meet you. My name's Zach, and then Rob gave me a little introduction. Today, we're going to be talking about Creo flexible modeling. Like Rob said, this is a fantastic tool, and it really, as a designer, will make your life a lot easier if it's not something that you're already using. What it really does is it gives you easy to use geometry editing tools that just enable you to quickly make changes to any design, even if they're non-native PTC designs, without losing or sacrificing design intent. Right, so in a quick agenda for today, we'll first just talk about challenges we see commonly in the industry. Then we'll go into our solution, talk about the capabilities a little bit of flexible modeling, get into the demonstration, and then recap everything in the end, discussing some value that this can bring to your company. Now, some of the challenges that we see companies commonly running into, just from talking to so many companies in the industry, is that a lot of companies have very long new product introduction cycle times. They found that parametric modeling is great. It's awesome. It works well, but sometimes it's slow and it can be very tedious to try new options or to make changes, especially whenever you're working with very complex models. What happens is you end up with delays and over budget projects that are obviously no good for any company. And you may even need to train users on multiple CAD solutions or waste time and effort reworking designs that you have to work with and rebuild geometry on because they're from other non-native CAD systems. Maybe it's designs that vendors or suppliers are supplying you. Maybe it's a legacy data that you have to work with. There's just no reason to suffer and go through having to remodel, rebuild everything from scratch just to make some very small changes to it. Doing things like that means that you really end up using third-party tools just to get annoying jobs done, rather than actually using them or using your time and your resources for innovation, which is what you obviously need to be doing. And what this means is that you're losing market share, you're losing revenue and profitability as your products end up potentially being late to market or failing to meet the highest performance and quality criteria. PTC's solution to these challenges is Creo Flexible Modeling, or FMX for short. It's all about working with geometry and very quickly and easily making changes to it regardless of its past. It doesn't matter where it came from, doesn't matter how it was created or what it was tied to. Now with EMX, using it is extremely, extremely easy. Like Rob said, it's just built into Creo. You don't need to use any other modules or extensions. It's just part of Creo. If you have Creo, you have flexible modeling. It's simply just extending the design capabilities of Creo Parametric. And it allows you to quickly and intelligently grab geometry and make these late stage design changes to the models using things like filters, like rules, and shape-based selection tools. Once you have that geometry recognition, then you can start making some changes. It's actually recognizing the geometry of these designs regardless of where they came from. It doesn't matter if it's from SolidWorks, NX, CATIA, Solid Edge, to name a few. It works the same in Creo with this tool. With it recognized, you'll get a whole suite of tools that you can edit the geometry with. You can move things, you can rotate, you can change patterns and spacing, even simply push or pull the geometry to the desired location. And then you can automatically replicate edits of patterns and symmetric geometry, and then propagate, change, and update geometry that's already been edited with flexible modeling. All right, now that gives you just a brief little introduction to what this tool actually is. We're going to go ahead and jump into the demonstration and take a look at what this thing looks like in action. I don't think, as of now, let's check. Yeah, we have no questions so far, so we'll keep rolling through it. All right. For this demonstration of flexible modeling extension, we're going to be working in the beginning with this brake disc. Now, this is an imported model from another CAD system. It's from SolidWorks. If you've worked with imported geometry before, you know almost always is the case that it does not have any features. It's a featureless blob that you really can't do anything with, which is why you end up having to redesign the part if you plan on using it and potentially need to make changes to it. So while working with that a lot of times is difficult, we're going to go through today how making changes with flexible modeling is so much easier and so much more efficient than doing it the way that you used to, where you redesign the model and build it up from scratch to make it, you know, homegrown in your own system and then make changes to it. So what we're going to do is with these, basically, I'm going to select on the geometry the different features and bases, any attribute that it has. And then I basically just say, move it, change it, tilt it, modify the size of it. And rather than having to delete a bunch of stuff, then create new shapes, we're just going to work with what's already there. So with these moves, you can add or delete. You can be explicit and say, from this edge to this edge, I want to have a specific height for value. We're basically parameterizing the things that we care about. And the rest of the model is still basically that featureless blob, but we're picking and choosing which pieces are important to us, and we're giving ourselves control over those features. So whatever pieces I make changes to, I can resize, I can put specific values in for, and we're leaving the original design intent completely unchanged. As we make these changes, the changes, if you look over in the model tree, are appearing there, so we would always be able to go back to them later in the process and edit them or delete them if the need arises. For example, here, we just went in, we recognized this extrusion here, and then we're dragging and dropping it to locations, or we can put in a specific value like we did there at the end. And now this thing is a set height. Now, beyond just altering the size or the height of different features, FMX takes this to the next level with pattern recognition. First, we select on the feature, and then we just tell Creo, recognize what we have selected as a cutout, and then recognize it as a pattern. Well, now what we can do is we can take that pattern and modify it. We can say, for example, instead of 4 cutouts, I want to have 6. Well, that's something that if you had to model, that's going to take forever to figure out the shapes, to figure out the sizes, the angles. But with FMX, you don't have to worry about any of it. So let's say now we want to change the size of this cutout. Okay, so how does this going to work? Well, we just apply the previously recognized pattern, and now that change applies to each one of those cutouts because they're all part of that pattern. So we make the change, it applies to all 6. And then once again, you can see here in the model tree that this new change appears over there. Again, we would be able to go back then, delete that, or edit it later in the process. Building on that, we can apply the same method to modify multiple cuts or other features at the same time. So it doesn't necessarily have to be as obvious as a pattern as what we're just looking at. So for this, we'll just hold the control key and multi-select here on these different cutouts, and on the edge, say recognize it as a pattern. And the reason we have to recognize this as a pattern is, again, just because whenever we bring these foreign files in, like I said, they're featureless, right? Most systems can't do anything with them, let alone start to edit them like we are today. So while we can make changes to this, we do have to tell Creo, we're basically telling it what to recognize these things that we select as. In this case, they're obviously cuts. So we select on them, we say, recognize these as cuts, and not just cuts, but recognize it as a pattern of cuts. And now once it knows what it's working with, that's when we can go forward and continue to make changes to it. In this case, we'll say, I want to edit this pattern. I want to change the instances from 6 to 10. I want to change the spacing from 60 to 36. And then as soon as we press OK, you can see that whole pattern change. We can even grab some geometry here outside of this break disk and change that. And the thing is with this could be something that affects a ton of adjacent features depending on how your designers are setting up the model. With FMX, we're not messing with the design intent whatsoever. We're just saying one pick, let's put a parameter on this diameter and let's change it, right? It's as simple as that. Even take this center cut right here, say recognize this as a cut, and not just change it. Let's get rid of it. I don't want to have it there. So it's so simple. You just select it. We said recognize it as a cut, delete. And it's literally that simple. And it just makes it so fast and easy to make edits to old geometry from foreign CAD tools that you're typically handcuffed with, and you really can't work with at all, let alone make changes like we are today. Before we move on, are there any questions in chat?
At this time, there are no questions.
Lovely. All right, we'll keep moving. Let's go ahead and open up a different model that we have. This one is an imported model as well. Okay, so you'll be able to see here when we open this up, we have an imported feature over, if you look on the left-hand side in the model tree. So this is probably an IGIS or a step file, some neutral file like that. But we're going to go through the same scenario here as what we saw before. It's an imported model with no design history, a featureless blob with lots of different arcs and lines and surfaces and so forth. But we can do things like, say, recognize these bosses and let's move them, right? So to do that, we can start here by building a center axis on this hole. And the reason we're doing that is because we just want to take those bosses and rotate them around. So we need a fixed point to rotate them around. That's all we're doing here. And then we'll rotate it. We'll have it rebuild these ribs once we get them in the position that we want. And also keep the old ones. I don't want to get rid of the old ones. I just want to copy the geometry of those. Press OK. And now you can see the whole thing regenerates. And we have the new pattern. We kept the old instances. We just added 2 more new ones. So just like that, we took what was already there and just extended it into this new place. And then I can highlight, for example, all of the cutouts in this Polaris logo here and say, all right, well, I just want to get rid of them. I don't want them here, right? So there was nothing there as far as a feature, technically, with the model that we're working with. It still is just a blob, but we are selecting what we want, and we're saying to Creo, recognize what I have as a specific shape or a specific cutout or a pattern, and then we can move forward with modifying it. Same thing here. Let's grab the shape where the hole or the cutouts are. We'll recognize those chamfers on top, and then we can modify them. So we'll, in this case, say I want to change those from 0.5 millimeters to 1 millimeter. And when I accept that change, it changes all of those that it found of the same size or shape across the model. Of course, you would also, if you just wanted to change one of those, you just wouldn't apply it as a pattern. You would just apply it to the one specific instance that you want to change. Right? And this is absolutely huge for cutting down on design time, where you typically have to rebuild a lot, if not everything, whenever you need to make changes to old or foreign designs that you're working with. We're recognizing these features as rounds, or chamfers in this case, and then we're just able to treat them like rounds and chamfers to make changes, even though that's not really what they were, because this is a foreign file that has really no features at all associated to it. It's dramatically improving the quality and the usefulness of your models and your ability to work with them. Next, on the other side, let's recognize this symmetry constraint, right? So say this thing is the same on the top and the bottom. It's the same on both sides of this beam that's going across. What's nice about that is now that we recognize this as a symmetry constraint, whenever we go to make changes, we can have those changes affect both sides of this feature. For example, if I grab the outer faces here, we can say I want to offset these from 0.5 millimeters to 0.65 millimeters. And now we get a larger piece. And then notice what happens here. It's going to rebuild all of the adjacent geometry. And we can control that, how that works. Say, is it a constant radius? Do you want some changes to be made automatically? Or do you want to start working with it and see what you like? It's up to you. For today, we already offset that radius to 0.65. So we'll just propagate those changes to the symmetry recognition in the model tree on the opposite side that we created a moment ago. And that's a pretty simple feature, just something basic here. But without a tool like this, even something that simple takes forever. If you're bringing something in from a foreign CAD system that really has no geometry or no features tied to it. You might even have to, like I've been saying, rebuild the whole thing from scratch just to make a change that took us 30 seconds. We flip this thing over, we'll go through the same sort of thing. I'll recognize this stiffening boss and say, let's make a pattern of it. And rather than it just being a featureless blob, we're making it a feature that we can actually work with. And that's the whole idea of FMX. You parameterize things. Make a feature of only the things that you care about. If you don't care about changing something, then just leave it how it is. Don't even worry about making any edits to it. That looks pretty good. And now we can continue to edit these things. If we want to maybe change the base of one of them, if we want to change the base of all of them, we just apply it to the pattern. It's literally that simple. It's such an easy tool to use, and the benefits are astronomical that you get in this tool, especially when it comes to efficiency. Next, let's look at one more example here, one more model. This time, it's a mounting plate. Now, this is actually a Creo model. And after what we've talked about so far, and after what we've gone through, you might be thinking, why would we need to use FMX with a Creo model, right? But watch what we're going to do here. This thing is complicated. It has all kinds of different cuts and patterns and chamfers and rounds, all kinds of stuff. Well, what we can do, even though this is a Creo model that we would be able to work with regardless, FMX can make our life so much easier here, right? So watch what happens. Let's say, for example, we want to get rid of this hole. Look what happens when we go to delete it, right? You can see all of these other cutouts are highlighted. So whoever designed this piece has tied other bits of geometry to this hole that we want to delete. So if I simply say, delete this, then all of these other features are going to be affected too. I would need to maybe go in and redesign them, or if you didn't build this model, it can be a much bigger problem where you need to figure out how the person who built it actually built it, or what they were doing, figure out what their design intent was. Or we can just use FMX and I can say, recognize this cutout, and let's just get rid of this one cutout. It's not going to affect anything else. So now you can see here, as soon as I press OK, Those cuts are gone, and it didn't affect any of the other geometry that cutout was tied to. Go to the other side, we can do the same sort of thing here. If I select this hole, I can simply say remove it. Whereas if I tried to delete it, then all of the other pieces of geometry that are tied to this would fail or maybe be distorted, or you can get into a whole world of problems depending how the designer built that out. On the top of this piece, maybe we want to do something with the mounting holes. I can tell the system, go and look for all of the other holes that are the exact same radius and the exact same depth as this, and then say, find those and let me remove them. Let's get rid of all of them, all at the same time. And we're just saving so much time working like this. If we flip this thing over, we can do the same thing for this hole on the opposite side of the mounting plate. We'll set the geometry rules to find holes that are coaxial to this as far as rounds and features, and also have an equal radius. And then we can say, get rid of them. And that really allows us to start over rather than having to go through the process of deleting features that affect more than what you want, then having to redesign half of the model. You just pick and choose what's already there and do whatever you want with it. It dramatically saves time, and it saves a whole lot of headache. Lastly, these holes on the opposite side. We're going to make one more change here. In this case, I want to move these, but maybe they're tied to other features. Well, I can easily do that using FMX. But what happens to the original sketch that defined these? Well, it's still there. I haven't deleted any of the underlying geometry, and that allows me to make simple changes, like changing these cutout diameters. And then the move will still take place, which is what we're doing here. We move those over. Well, then it doesn't matter what the original one is still there. We would still be able to make changes to it, like you can see we're doing here. So this truly maintains your design geometry and design intent, your rules if you're working with Creo, and it makes working with imported designs so much easier. That's it for the demonstration of Creo flexible modeling. I have a few more points I want to share that summarize what FMX can bring to your company. But before I do that, let me take a quick look at if we have any questions, and we do not. So we'll go ahead and finish this thing off. Oh, I did have this thing. There we go. Clicked on the wrong one. It's all right. So what's FMX going to do for you? First, it's going to reduce your time to market by streamlining your design process, especially in late stages, or if you're working with outside geometry that's just typically a nightmare to deal with for anybody, and especially whenever you try to make changes to it. You're also going to reduce product development costs because it's so much easier to reuse or repurpose CAD data. It doesn't matter who made it. It doesn't matter how it was made. Go ahead and reuse it and make design changes that you need to it. And that's going to dramatically improve product quality. You have time to explore design alternatives and new design ideas because you're saving so much time working with these models, and that you've now given engineers the opportunity to engineer as you've increased their productivity. So that is Creo flexible modeling extension. Thanks for coming, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the presentation and you learned a little bit about this tool.
Absolutely. That was a great job, Zach. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
So that's going to conclude our webinar for today. I want to thank everybody for being on. If you have any questions regarding flexible modeling, you can get in touch with us by emailing us at info@3hti.com, or what you can do is from the email that invited you to this webinar, if you reply to those, they come directly to me. So once again, I want to thank you, Zach, for doing a great job. Great demonstration, and obviously this is a tremendous tool. And if you're not using it, you need to get it because it's going to save you a ton of time. So thanks again, Zach, and thanks everyone for being on. And we will see you next Thursday, where I believe, Jeff, our webinar is going to be on surfacing.
That's correct. Next Thursday, same day, same time, noon Eastern. we will have a surfacing webinar running for everybody.
Cool. We'll see you all there. Have a great week, everybody.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good one. Bye.